Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire just had a debate with Mehdi Hasan about the right wing, Trump, and everything that's going on politically right now at Dartmouth University. And to say that Michael Knowles was beaten badly is not even close to what actually went down. Let's take a look together at what I think is the highlight of this debate.
So I suppose the question is President Trump suppressing the First Amendment? And I know that my opponent here on stage made a bold prediction, a promise really, in March of 2024. He said that if President Trump were to be elected again, the stakes for the media were very, very high. What would happen to the free press under President Trump? You know, he's already threatening to do it. Last I checked, unfortunately, the New York Times and CNN still get to publish. MSNBC has sort of gone downhill, but that's mostly because NBC didn't want to deal with them anymore. There's been really no threat to free speech whatsoever under President Trump. His critics are allowed to threaten to kill him. I mean, in the case of Hassan Piker, one of the chief critics of President Trump and one of the people who's instigated violence was exalted by the New York Times just last week. After 3 assassination attempts. So I wish that, frankly, there were more limits on speech under Trump, but there certainly is not.
I want you to pay attention to the fact that this man just said that he wishes that there were more limits on free speech. And this is the same guy in the same crowd, Daily Wire, that argued about free speech and how the left is suppressing them and not letting them say what they want and all that kind of good stuff. And now this man is sitting here arguing that free speech should be limited. Ain't that just hilarious?
And then when you look at constitutional precedent, we of course have to remember that our second president of the United States, John Adams, passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, much of which remains on the books today. Under Woodrow Wilson, Democrat president, he imprisoned his political rival Eugene Debs, the leader of the Socialist Party. But that act has been used to prosecute people for speech for many, many years, including the socialist journalist, the head of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the leaker of the Pentagon Papers, and Bradley Manning, even under Barack Obama. So we've seen a lot of curtailment of speech. I think a lot of that is within the confines of the First Amendment. And I wish that President Trump would tighten it up a little bit, especially when it comes to those left-wing universities that receive federal dollars and certainly don't need to.
So let's get this clear. Not only is the president not curtailing the free speech amendment, the First Amendment, but he should be curtailing it more. And the answer to the question of whether he is in fact fighting against the First Amendment is that other presidents in the past have done it too, therefore he's justified to do so. And curtailing the First Amendment is within the confines of the First Amendment itself. That makes zero sense. And not only does it answer the first question regarding if Trump is curtailing the First Amendment, but also he admits within his answer that yes, in fact, the current president is fighting against the First Amendment. And this man is Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire, the company that just fought on free speech and said that free speech is the one thing that we Americans must have the right to do no matter what, when, and where. Now let's take a look at what the lefty British American man has to say about this, who comes from an oppressive government that doesn't have free speech.
That is an amazing answer, Michael. Both to deny that there's an assault on the free press and to say you wish that there was a bit more of an assault on the free press. Let's just be very clear. Let's just be very clear about where the facts are on this. Michael thinks everything's fine. Okay. Donald Trump has arrested Don Lemon. He's raided the home of a Washington Post reporter. He has blocked AP from the Oval Office. He tried to defund NPR and PBS. A judge shot it down. He's tried to ban flag burning, which goes against Supreme Court case Texas versus Johnson from 1989. He's tried to get a late night comedian fired because he didn't like his jokes. He has just go down the list when it comes to the free press. They tried to restrict reporters reporting at the Pentagon. A judge shot that down too, saying you're not supposed to prescribe the press. He has threatened the New York Times just the other day. He said they should be guilty of sedition because they reported on his Iran war in a way he did not like. He has engaged in multiple lawsuits to try to intimidate and suppress the press. His defense secretary bragged loudly that CNN will be coming under new pro-Trump ownership. Just go down the list.
This is insane. The man just rambled on and gave example after example after example of how the president had fought against the First Amendment and said this is a place where he has done it, he has done this, and listed 7 or 8 different things back to back. That is actually answering the question. Did he fight against the First Amendment? The answer is yes. Whether it's him getting Jimmy Kimmel off the show, Jimmy Kimmel off of the late night show, and then after the backlash, they had to reinstate him, and he fought against a bunch of like news anchors and try to sue them. There were prosecutions all over the place regarding people that he considered were spreading fake news about him. And the fact that he said people should be put to death penalty because of the fact that they said you don't have to follow illegal orders is beyond insanity. And the fact that Michael Knowles did not address that at all tells you everything you need to know. Now let's move on to the second point.
To the question of not whether Trump upheld the Constitution in with regards to January 6th, but did he uphold constitutional norms?
Great question. Is that for any one of us in particular?
Particularly you, Michael, but either of you could
I'd
go
love
at
to
it.
answer after Michael.
Sure.
Do
Yeah.
2 minutes and 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure thing. Yes, he did. Again, I'm not convincing anyone that they should like love the horn hat guy. That's not the basis on which you're voting this evening. But there is a great precedent for contested elections in the United States. In fact, that's what the 12th Amendment is about. We've had a number of contested elections. Obviously, 1860, the election of Lincoln, the Rutherford b. Hayes, which resulted in the Compromise of 1876. Bush v. Gore, Al Gore refused to concede for months after that, and there were some riotous events. So what occurred at the Capitol on January 6th was very unfortunate, though it's been much lied about. It's worth pointing out that the only person who was killed in political violence that day was a Trump supporter who was killed by a trigger-happy cop. There's also a special irony to Democrats complaining about January 6th as the worst day in the history of this or any republic, because not only was it not the worst political violence in American history, it wasn't the worst political violence of that year. It followed the little prosecuted BLM riots that very same year, where Kamala Harris and staffers for Joe Biden actually bailed the rioters out of jail. But there's a greater irony, which is that there have been 5 or 6, depending on how you score it, attacks on the Capitol in American history. Virtually all of them have been perpetrated by radical leftists, a Marxist Harvard professor, Harvard men, of course. But then one in 1971 was perpetrated by Bill Ayers of the Weather Underground. Bill Ayers, in whose living room Barack Obama launched his political career. So it's very unfortunate that took place on January 6th. It's unfortunate that there were questions about the 2020 election, questions which arose because the election rules were radically changed in the weeks and months before the election, in some cases unconstitutionally, as in the case of mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. It's also a bit strange that Nancy Pelosi took responsibility for not having sufficient security of the Capitol.
Notice how when he's asked the question about whether Trump has held the Constitution in regards to what happened in January 6th, he doesn't just say yes or no. He says, well, there are precedents to a lot of stuff happening in the past that were not okay. And by the way, none of which were remotely close to what happened on January 6th. Not even close. And his whole argument could be boiled down to something similar to this has happened in the distant past, therefore what happened today is okay. He's mentioning things like Al Gore and 1876 or something about some dude, nothing remotely close to where a president said no, the election was stolen and I'm not going to let this thing slide. Nothing of that kind ever happened before. Yes, you might have had people who said this is not okay or whatever, but nothing to the level of what happened. You had your own vice president who came up and said, no, I'm not going to support you in violating the Constitution. And him and his own vice president ended up having an entire fallout because of it. And he's equivocating between that and some events that have happened in the 1800s and the 1900s. Notice he's never capable of just saying yes or no. Not only that, but also the point about the BLM rights. It has already been proven that the overwhelming majority of the protests that happened during 2020 and 2021 were overwhelmingly peaceful. Yes, riots did happen, but the overwhelming majority of the protests that happened were actually peaceful. And this is just factual. And I'll put up the stats on the screen. But let's take a look at how Mehdi's going to respond to this.
But regardless, it's a great pity that it took place. I hope it doesn't take place again. And unfortunately, it's also not totally out of the norm for the United States going back at least to the middle of the 19th century.
So glad you asked that question because January 6th hadn't come up and it was a big issue from Trump's end of his first term. Mike Pence, we talked about Mike Pence, who Michael's a fan
Why does
of.
Mike Pence keep coming out?
Because you're a fan of his, and he was the vice president who didn't endorse the president for another term because he said he made me do unconstitutional stuff. He wanted me to violate my constitutional oath. That's from Mike Pence's testimony. You want to dismiss it because you know there's comeback for it. You cite Al Gore. Al Gore never incited an insurrection. There is no precedent for January 6th. We were used to peaceful transfers of power. Richard Nixon agreed agreed, even though he's probably robbed by JFK. Al Gore agreed, even though he's probably robbed by George W. Bush. Donald Trump actually lost, for sure, and he still didn't accept it and incited a riot. Michael says, oh, Democrats thought it was the worst day in history. Do you know who said, bar none, it was the most horrifying day in American politics in my lifetime?
Mike Pence.
No.
I don't know. You guessed him, so I assume.
Guess again. It was Ben Shapiro on January the 7th.
Yo, that I'm not gonna lie, that's like the highlight of the entire thing. Michael Knowles' own boss was the one who said that exact same quote, and this guy didn't even know that. That was top 10 moments in this entire thing. That's like top 2 moments in this entire thing.
Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning neo-Nazis, domestic abusers, pedophiles?
Well, hold on. Was he?
Do you condemn Trump for pardoning?
I'm just asking a clarifying question about that guy. Was he one of the neo-Nazis who was getting $3 million from the SPLC, or was he a different neo-Nazi?
Nice diversion. I'm not Harry Sisson. I'll use up my time. Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning neo-Nazis, violent criminals, people who assaulted 140 police officers on January the 6th?
One last real clarification.
You won't answer.
One last real clarification.
I'll ask again. No, simple question. Do you support pardoning the 600 people who were charged with assaulting police officers?
Pardon them for
like Daniel Lodge. He pardoned them for assaulting police. Oh, wait. Do you support them? 3 times. He hasn't accused assaulting police. Donald Trump for pardoning 600 people who assaulted police officers. 4th time. Can you do it?
I'm happy to. I condemn pedophilia.
Do you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning and January 6 riots? If you want.
He's being pressed about something morally reprehensible. If you remember, this is the same crowd, the Daily Wire crowd, are the same ones that said, our kids, they're being taught about trans stuff and they're changing the books and all that. Morality was the one thing that they were pushing. Christianity, Judeo-Christian, whatever the hell that means, and all these things. And now when he's being asked about your president was the one who was pardoning, or who was the one who pardoned people who were allegedly like touching kids, neo-Nazis and a whole bunch of stuff. And instead of just saying, yes, these people should not have been pardoned, he has to support his president no matter what happens, to the point where he has to even overlook the morality that he has been pushing his entire career. And I'm not going to drag this video on. This whole debate was absolutely embarrassing for Michael Knowles. I suggest you guys watch it. There's a guy who's just coughing the entire time, and they re-uploaded the video one more time. But it's about an hour long, and the whole debate could be summarized as good question being asked by the student and the moderator, and Michael Knowles effectively just saying, stuff like this have happened in the past, and it's okay since it happened in the past, therefore it's fine, and never really truly answers the question. He truly reeks of a sleazy salesman that's just trying to sell you a lie, and just trying to make money off of you. The entire time, instead of just answering the question blatantly and just saying, yes, there were things that were done wrong. Yes, this shouldn't have happened. He has to constantly fight for his president because he's a dogmatic individual. He believes his president is right no matter what. And even at the fact that his own president ended up depicting himself as God and posting it on social media, he didn't even condemn that. He didn't find that egregious or just blasphemous. Are you not a Christian? Where's your backbone? The man is mocking your religion. He's mocking the man you worship. And that's how you respond to it. That tells you either you're not really a worshiper of Jesus or you're just a worshiper of Trump. And I'll leave it at that. Let me know what you guys think about this whole thing in the comment down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. And if the algorithm gets it right, you're probably going to like the video that's going to be on the screen, whichever one of the two is going to be. See you guys on the next one.